Then the Swedish U18 is playing quarterfinal in the World Championship today. I think Canada plays Finland now. Other than that, I figure out what I'm gonna do next year. Maybe I do a youth retirement or like have some other things on the go here. So see what's happening.
Have you heard how
Top of your head, Peter?
Sorry.
Have you heard how Canada Finland went today?
No, I just know Canada was up like with 1 goal last time I checked it. So
okay, good. Hi, Sammy.
Hi, Sammy.
Hi, everyone. Good to see everyone.
good.
Sammy, is your husband back in town?
He is. He actually got to throw out the opening pitch at the Toronto Blue Jays game last night, which was really exciting for the family.
That's
Okay,
good.
great.
You all went?
We all did, yeah. Lots of fun.
Well, listen, let's get him and Ken on for early in May if we can.
Okay.
We'll try to.
I know that he's been chatting with Ken to kind of coordinate a time that works for both of them. So.
Okay, well, just let me know. I'll give Ken a call and shoot the breeze with him. So, Tim, how are things in your hockey world, Tim Taylor?
Going good, Wally. Was on the ice earlier this week, and the team I'm helping with this year has what they call a parity tournament this weekend to help place teams in the right division going forward for the new season. So having fun.
Peter, I got a question. You mentioned you're not sure of next year. What's going on?
I have a couple of international feelers out and see if anything of that land, but you never know. I'm not so desperate anymore. I'm the age now where I enjoy a glass of wine and at the golf course too.
Yeah.
Peter, do you live in Minnesota or where do you live?
No, I live in Sweden.
Oh, you live in Sweden.
1 hour north of Copenhagen.
So anything that you would accept or want, you would want around there?
No, my son is graduating high school and he's gonna go to North America and play next year. So there is nothing that bounds me here. Like I'm gonna keep my house there. It's a good summer location, but work-wise, it's better to go abroad.
I was just thinking about the potential of new coaching positions in professional women's hockey.
Yeah, that could be interesting. So what's gonna happen? What's gonna happen with those 2 leagues? I saw that the PFH or whatever, they got the old USA female director as their commissioner now. So
yeah, so obviously I've been following them very closely for a couple years now, and I really love what the PHF has done. I love that they have tried to mend the fences and to build bridges. And I'm still unsure why the PWHPA, which is the players, they finally said they refused to work with them and they are starting their own league come January. However, some of the big backers, the big money people in the PHF that I've had conversations with are unsure how they're going to actually start come January if they haven't announced cities, locations, those kind of things yet. So, yeah, the PHF has what I see as a lot of people working for the good of the game, or seem to be. And the only thing they're lacking is the players. So hopefully Reagan Carey, who was just hired because of her connection to USA Hockey and to all those players, can bridge that gap. Ken Dufton has been with them for a little while, and Lisa Haley as well, and 2 people that I really respect as well. So I feel like slowly but surely they're getting people that the players respect in those positions, and I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that there still could be something where they can work together. But the way the landscape sits right now is the PWHPA will open up 6 brand new franchises come January, pay their players between $35,000 and $50,000. The PHF will continue with their 6 franchises and have 2 openings, 2 new franchises. So they'll up to 8 come September. And their players will be paid between probably 25 and 40,000. So I think a lot of players that live in those cities, it would be hard to not simply play there. I mean, if you live in Minnesota, you want to play for the Minnesota team, you probably don't care what league they're in. But I mean, lots of decisions to be made.
What I heard it's from the players, it's the infrastructure of that PF. I never remember.
PHF.
Yeah,
Premier Hockey Federation.
Well,
it's the infrastructure. Like, hey, you have your own dressing room, you practice every day, you have the physio, you have that structure that you're used to from college. Until there is a league or the teams who have that, it's going to be hard to convince those players to step down. That's so.
Yeah, and I think what they've done is they've attempted to create that. So they sit down with the players and say, "What do you want?" And then they create it, and then the players seem to still not happy with it. So I'm not sure if there's anything they could do that would make them jump ship at this point. I feel like they've been at it for 3 years. They've had this holdout for 3 years, and they really just want to create something on their own.
Yeah, no.
So I don't know that the Toronto Six. I mean, I'm not involved with them at all, but the Toronto Six has a dressing room at York. They have 2 practices in the evenings, 2 practices during the day available for the players for additional ice time. They play on weekends. They get an extra travel day. They have all of their medical needs taken care of. I mean, they're making probably about $20,000 right now. So it's not huge, but for that player that's never going to make the national team, that is huge. So.
Yeah, no, so yeah, it's going to be interesting to see where it's going. I just compare what the Swedish SHL teams do, and they practice. They have 1 day off. They practice every day. They have like morning skates, like mandatory morning skates. Luleå is organized like the men's team, like strength condition coaches, like.
And how much do you think that the players make approximately?
I think that they're making more in Canada. So I think the players, so here Koski and Luleå as those world-class players, I think their salary is about 3,000 Canadian a month, 12-month contract. The top players, then the lower players, they make maybe 15,000 a month, or 15,000 Canadian a season.
It would be interesting to see if $50,000 would allow a European to come over, or that wouldn't be enough to really live in.
No, I talked with them about that.
Yeah.
But the first thing they're asking, when do we practice? 2 practices night would attract any international caliber player to leave the environment when they are just to play hockey for those months. So.
Well, you'd have 4 practices, but only half of the team would be able to go to the other ones.
So that's the weak point. Like you have a full team, you come in like doing what NHL. Come in the morning, you work out, you skate, and then season is 4 months long. If you want to do something else, those 8-month season or 9, that's what I would say.
That's what I'm assuming the PWHPA will be set up like, because they'll be in cities that the players have to fly to. They'll be drafted to those so they'll have full access to the players at all times, whereas the PHF has teachers and paramedics, and they have people that are fully entrenched in their communities that are working. So I think that'll be the big difference, which is exciting that there'll be a place like that in North America. I'm just curious if that would draw over some of the Europeans to want to play amongst the best.
It's the daily practice and the daily rhythm is what's going to decide it. So.
Yeah,
I think the best for women hockey was that the PW, like they would be running the top league, and the PAH they would be like the minor league. They would have.
Yeah, I mean that would be ideal if the PHF didn't have triple the amount of money that the PWHPA has. So it's almost like they need to reverse the order, right? Like all of the investors, all of that need to be on the other side. But they've been also, the PHF has been at it now for 7 years, so makes a difference. But it'll be interesting to see what happens come September, because this other league doesn't start till January. So who signs in one side and who signs in the other, be a lot to navigate for the players, and a lot of choices, which is just great for women's hockey.
Yeah, no, it's going to be interesting. And then,
So maybe some coaching positions. That's why I say keep your ears open, because that could be a great place for you.
yeah, my thing, and this seems like anti-Canadian, anti-USA, to get a better scene for women's hockey in the world, there should be a league where the best in the world play, and there is no centralization. You don't centralize teams. You pick players from the same nation, and you play. You maybe have a break, a month break, or like 3 weeks ahead. That's because that's where the gap is coming. Like Canada and USA centralized the 26 best players in their country. They work together with them, with good coaching and everything. So now the gap gets bigger again. So the centralization is like it's things from the Soviets in the 80s.
I agree. I think if they're gonna go professional and really take that next step, they can't leave for a year either. I mean, not just the fact that it makes this bigger gap, but you can't leave your the people that are funding, you can't leave the fans, you can't leave all of that if that's the next step that is taken. So I assume that that's what's going to happen with this new league, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Oh, Wally, you're on mute. And Peter, I think we only see your ceiling.
Okay, Mike Benelli, you're on. What's going on in your hockey world?
I'm just able to listen in today, Wally. I just got back from Finland, and I'm trying to recover some work. So, so I'm just traveling around, but wanted to catch and listen in.
What were you doing in Finland?
I was just in Helsinki picking up some floorball sticks. So I guess it's been crazy 4 days, but all good. But I try not to miss these calls, so just driving down to Long Island, so I figured I'd jump on.
Okay. Hal, what's happening in the female hockey world out your way?
Not much right now. Our season's over. We've got all these high performance programs that are just sort of wrapping up. Boys and girls waiting to hear on a coaching job in a high school for a girls team, but that's an interesting process, especially in the public schools. So not too much right now.
Tom Malloy, what's up?
Turn my. Oh, not a lot. I'm just doing. I'm paid to the end of May, so I'm doing recruiting, and they've advertised my job, and yeah, just talking to a few players, and I'm playing 3 times a week, riding my electric bike, and doing that kind of stuff every day. Every day I'm posting something on my Facebook coaching site. It's good for me because then I remember what I've got. I've got so much stuff that seeing stuff that I forgot that I even had. And so just doing all that kind of stuff.
Okay, I just wanted to give everybody a heads up moving down the road. The first priority is getting Billy and Ken Babby on and talking the sled hockey and the difference in the games and the journey and the elite performance aspect of it. So we're hoping to do that sooner than later in the month of May. Thomas Pacina expressed an interest in continuing to do some things and showing some video. And if any of you have anything that you want to add to future sessions, just let me know and we'll work it in. The NHL playoffs right now are catching probably most male eyes. And in particular, boy, I'm really curious about the game that's going to be in the playoffs compared to the game that was all year. And it looks like physicality is going to be a dominating factor in the eventual final result. It's sure going to be an interesting thing. Now, I don't know where Peter went, but 2 years ago, Peter had mentioned this player that went to Detroit, Sider, and he was saying he was like an I-19 phone. He was such a quick thinker. And I've watched video of him, and the guy has statistics that are incredible. So when Peter gets back on, I'd like him to tell us a bit more about his background, and also trying to get to the root of the number of Swedish hockey players that they're churning out that have obviously a great skill level, a compete level, and hockey sense to be able to survive and star in the NHL is a tribute to whatever the programs are doing. So with their playoffs going on now, it'd be really interesting in following that hockey a little bit closer. So anybody else got anything? Sammy, I'm been following the female debate and this team and that team and this league and that league. And it really appears to be a continuing saga. And I'm not sure whether the NHL would support both if they came to an agreement of some kind, but it would, it's how much of what eventually is going to be decided will the NHL play a role in, or are they completely hands off?
They're completely hands off. Yeah, so they have basically said not right now. But some future episodes that I would be intrigued about. I saw that when Thomas was presenting, you had Sarah Hillworth, I think is her name, from UNB.
Yeah.
On the call, and I'd be really curious. I don't. Her wife played with me for the Toronto Furies, but I don't know her as well. But I'd be really curious to hear about UNB because they were ousted. Like they didn't have a team for a long time, and then she came back in and was the first coach there and brought them to the national championship. So I'd be curious about her progression over 5 years and how she did that. And so that was something that came to mind. But also hearing from, I don't know if Peter has presented to this group either, Elander, about his Swedish journey, because I would be very intrigued with that, the 2006 team that fared so well and how he transformed sort of Swedish hockey culture. Those were just two that came to mind.
Yeah, I'm curious too, because Peter's certainly done it all. You're aware that he spent a lot of time in North Dakota?
Mm-hmm.
And boy, if anybody's got his fingers in the pie all over the world, he certainly does. And he would be a very interesting case study. The other, there's a Finnish coach that is coaching Japan on the female side. When I was scouting for Hockey Canada, he's a similar type of person, dedicated to the female game and really being involved around the world with other countries. So Tim Bothwell had mentioned the same thing that Peter brought up about centralization, and it grows the gap rather than shrinks the gap. And he suggested to me that Canada and the USA have to absorb some financial responsibility to support hockey in the other countries in that regard. And I'm just totally impressed with what's happening in the pro female leagues around the world in soccer, female hockey. It's quite amazing. And I have a granddaughter who's probably going to go to the U of M and play soccer next year. And her goal is to play in a pro league in Europe. And she's pretty realistic about what it's going to take. But the opportunities there And I look at the number of players that I know from North America that are playing in Europe, and it might be just making ends meet, but they're getting a world hockey experience. So I think the growth is on the right track, and I'm just I hope in my lifetime I get to see some sort of unity occur and for it to really get off the ground.
I hope in my lifetime too, Wally.
Yeah, well, in yours, I'm sure. Well, I didn't call anybody to get on today. Tim Bothwell said he might join us. He's got a game in 6 minutes. He's mentoring at a Hockey Alberta event. I believe it's U15. Boys, 8 zone teams around the province that are meeting in Red Deer, and they go through the process of, and the females do the same thing. Their competition is next week. Carl McLeod and Jordan Fenton are involved with the female side. Tim Bothwell's involved with the male side, but it's basically in a role of mentorship and going through the process of drafting and selecting teams and then mentoring the coaches as they work with the teams and learn how to manage the bench to build a team, not shorten the bench to try to get an outcome, which, as I've repeatedly said, is the problem of the game. Anyway, I'm looking at possibility of mentoring 3 Pee Wee teams in a quadrant association here in Calgary, male coaching staffs, I believe, of male Pee Wee teams. What they've done in Calgary is they've created we have 4 quadrants, and each quadrant has 3 elite Pee Wee teams in it. And mentoring them would be a good place to start, and then see where they can go as they move up the playing and coaching ladders. So, Tom, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I think that Pee Wee thing is the worst idea I've ever heard in my life, because we've got 80% of the kids quitting at 14 because all of a sudden they don't make these elite teams, and all of a sudden they think, if that was one of their goals. I mean, the size difference, I taught junior high for 24 years. The size difference of the kids is just so enormous that the big kids are going to make that team, and so many kids are going to quit. And we have, like in Calgary, we've got, I think it was 13,500 players played in that minor hockey week. And every quadrant, like I live in Trails West, and every quadrant has a Div 1 team, which are the best players. Or not quadrant, sorry, every association. And I don't know how many associations there are, maybe 20 associations. So you get 20 Div 1 teams and Div 2 teams, like here it's by division, just like European soccer. And now you're going to have, cut that into about a third, and all sorts of kids are going to quit the game. So, I just think it's just elitist. Everything's got to be elite, and I just think they drive kids out of the game because they don't think they can make it. And then their parents, don't think they can make it, and they'll stop funding them. So it's great for the kids that do make it, but I think it's just a horrendous idea. I don't think they should be having the quadrant hockey. Like here, we have 4 sections of the city, and it's the same thing. And I don't think that should be until high school age, because I just posted a video the other day. It's a under 15 team I had, a boys team. And I kept this little wee guy, 5'2", maybe 100 pounds. And I had other guys on my team. I had one guy that was like a foot taller and 100 pounds more than him. Well, the little guy just signed with Seattle 3 days ago because now he's 6 foot tall. And, I was the only guy that kept him. Everybody else was cutting him. because he was so little, but he was a fantastic skater, good skills. And he ended up playing, in the dub for Regina. And Seattle drafted him in the second round, their last second round choice, one of their multiple picks they had last year. And they just signed him. But, if we didn't take him, he would have just disappeared into the abyss.
Tom,
And-
I got a question for you. They've changed. How long ago did they eliminate body checking at the Pee Wee level?
Oh, I don't know. It was
That was an attempt eliminating body checking, and I noticed in the communities that I worked with, it really brought in skilled players and changed the way kids play for the better. So that's sort of a counter argument. I don't know that they're picking.
brought in body checking for bantam when you get the biggest difference in size.
Yeah. But the skill component has taken over the game, I believe. And
well, the body checking, there should be a rule that you have to have the stick on the puck and you're allowed the 2 steps. If they call that, and I think the Americans are doing that now, right, Hal? Something about stick on the puck. If you got the stick on the puck, your stick is down. You're under control. You're playing the puck. It's not just racing across the ice like you're head hunting, to get this big hit on a guy. And, I think the game, I think that there should be body checking all the way through, but you could have 1-step body checking with stick on the puck. And because that's the game that you're teaching. But
I wonder, Mike Benelli and Hal and Tim Taylor, can you comment on the rules and how the USA Hockey has adapted to body checking versus hitting and the way they've tried to approach it?
Yeah, my understanding is if there's no attempt to play the puck and contact's made, then that should be called.
Mike Benelli.
Yeah, well, I think the way, and one of the things we tried to do down here is get away from even calling it. There's no really. We try to stay away from even the verbiage of body checking, and just really try to formulate the idea that there is going to be body contact. But I think that the idea that coaches need to teach that the players are attempting to play the puck. The body contact and the checking is really just a result of the fact that you're putting yourself between the puck and the body after retrieving it. So I think that's where, that little nuance of teaching that has really changed, I think in a lot of good ways, the way players look for possession and trying to get the guys down here to stay away from the fact that you're, that there's like an intimidation piece or a momentum changing piece of the body check. I think the rule, for us, really, even at bantam hockey now, in 14U and 12U hockey, it's a lot more emphasis on the fact that, at no time can you just go in and attempt to play the body. There has to be an attempt and a look and the resulting piece has to be that the player touched the puck first and then proceeded for the play. And I think but I think it's a challenge. I think it's just as big a challenge for officials as well, because it's a hard thing for them to not look at being traditional hockey, right? The real hockey, if you're not taking the body. So it's a little hard to change, but I think slowly but surely you're seeing it, especially because we've added more body contact to the AU level. It really teach a lot more body contact in the idea that you're always trying to get your body between a player and the puck. That's causing a lot more body contact, and I think that's helped the players respond to that contact as well.
I'm going to ask a question here. Basically, coaches and referees have to be on the same page when they're making a call related to crossing the line of hitting and body check, the degree of that. Is it possible that they could agree on making the judgment on two things? The degree of force and the intent of the action. To me, that's not difficult, but I've been advocating that in officiating is the purpose of the body check is primarily to gain possession of the puck. Now, with the NHL playoffs happening, the degree of force is going to change. The acceptance of physicality is going to expand, but we're not talking NHL here. We're talking kids growing up to play in the NHL or to play university hockey or junior hockey and earn livings after that. So is it possible in your minds, think about that. I mean, we're criticizing the rules, but we haven't defined the rule in terms of how to interpret it. So Tom, I'm asking you, can you expect coaches and officials to agree on recognizing the degree of force and the intent playing a part in the call?
Well, I think that's in the rules is boarding, right? If you hit someone in the boards violently, it's supposed to be boarding. And so I think it's that's got to be looked at and it should be looked at. The rules have always been in place for all of this stuff, but it's whatever the emphasis of calling is, but it gets pretty scary in bantam when you got a 6'2", 200-pounder and a clobber. Like that little guy that just got drafted, he wasn't very good in the boards when he was playing bantam because he was, they could kill him there. But he was really good in open ice and handling the puck.
Tom, my question was, can you as a coach and an official agree on the line?
Well, Wally, that's what I just said. I said it's in the rule. There is boarding.
Yeah.
So, and boarding is how violently you hit the boards. So, I don't think I agree that it should be discussed and said, I don't think boarding is called hardly ever.
What about open ice hitting?
Well, open ice hitting that, I mean, you're more blocking. If you're going at a guy open ice trying to clobber him, I mean, that's when you get the kneeing and all that if you don't quite get him, right? Like that's really dangerous.
I guess I give up because it means coaches and officials can't agree on making calls like that. So they don't know.
That's not what I said, Wally.
Yeah.
I said it's in the rule book, but they have to call it.
Well, they can't agree on, to me, it's simple. The line between the purpose rests in the degree of force and the intent. And that's easy to judge. To me, that's not difficult to judge, regardless of what the rules say.
Well, if you got your stick on the puck, then your intent is the puck, right? I think women's hockey should have that rule too. I think they should be body checking.
Yeah.
Within the rules.
Tim Taylor, you brought a point up. Do you want to address that? Yep. Tim Taylor, I think, put the rule up on the chat.
Yeah. So, I'm sorry, I was muted. The actual rule hasn't changed for body checking for some number of years with USA Hockey, but they recently, within the last couple of years, came out with what they call the points of emphasis. And Hal actually probably better, not more knowledgeable than I am on this, but essentially, what I posted in the chat is the area of emphasis within the calling the rules on the ice, and what the ref should be looking for, and it generally has to do with intent to play the puck.
Okay. Well, Sammy, I've always thought that the female game is more of an ideal game to play in. I just think that's really pure hockey, and there's a line of physicality there that is clearly defined with a distinguish between body checking and body contact in a pretty clear way. It makes the intent fairly obvious. So
I think you're right, Wally, but I mean, maybe Kim can weigh in on it more, because I think you're right that the line is more differentiated. But what we find in women's hockey then is the referees are not necessarily calling it all the same. So as a player, it's really hard to know. As a coach, it's really hard to know. And I love that Kim has just raised her hand, because she's probably going to talk for 20 minutes on this now.
okay, well, before Kim digs in, Hal, you go ahead and then we'll go to Kim.
Yeah, thanks. 'Cause I have to run too, but, you know, I agree with Tom. I mean, all this stuff's in the rule book and has been. I mean, the issue is getting officials to actually enforce what's in the rule book. So with, you know, Pee Wee hockey, or that would be what, U12 for girls too. You have, I mean, in Minnesota, we have 20,000 games a year, which is a lot of games and takes a lot of officials. And, you know, like anything else, getting officials is not an easy task, and keeping them is even harder, especially with the younger age levels and the kind of environment some of these officials have to go into, the younger ones, with the adults screaming at them and the coaches screaming at them. So, you know, at the lower levels, you don't get great officials. But more recently, because I've been doing a lot of the female game, I had a long conversation with a couple of the officials after a game the other night, just asking them how they feel about this, because I get the impression that no harm, no foul is sort of the rule, that if, you know, yeah, there's a collision, but if nobody got hurt and everybody got back up, we're going to let it go. So I think there's a big transition going on in the women's game towards a more physical game than what they were at, let's say, 5 years ago. But I think officiating has a hard time, especially guys, officials that are going back and forth between the men's game and the women's game, and trying to get those subtle nuances and get it to apply. So I actually got to do I have to coach 3 or 4 games, women's games this weekend, and it's just something that interests me a great deal. The girls I've been working with the last couple of years are, you know, really terrific athletes, and they're spending time in the weight room, and they want to play like the boys. They want to do that. And then the other thing I've been advocating here in Minnesota for probably 25 years is that we need to teach body contact starting at the lowest levels in some sort of fashion. But I know that coaches don't do it because either they're unprepared, or they don't know how, or they're too busy, and they don't practice often enough. I mean, if you're playing a 65 game schedule, you know, in 120 days, and they got to have a few days off, they don't get a lot of time to practice this stuff. So unfortunately, these kids have to learn it through the feedback they're getting from officials during games. It's kind of how they have to learn how to do this. So anyways, I have a run. Thanks, everybody. I'll see you next week. Every day is a great day for hockey, right? We'll see y'all. If I can figure out how to turn it off.
Kim McCullough.
Hey everyone, sorry I got the camera off. It's a little hectic around here these days, but yeah, I think there's struggles with referees calling physicality both offensively and defensively. I think perhaps in the female game, we're all a little more familiar with, the net front battles, the pinning along the wall, the angling and steering. I found that since we started emphasizing physicality when you have the puck, drive skating, owning your space, there's been some challenges of maybe the defensive player not being ready for that, and our attacking players, drive skating with the puck and sends the girl flying. And sometimes the officials are like, what just happened there? Like it's sort of a new, I wouldn't say new, but still relatively rare skill to be emphasized or used in the female game. And so sometimes the referees are unsure of whether that's a call or not a call. And, some of our more physically eager players, certainly use that to their advantage and essentially look like they're body checking someone when they're carrying the puck down the ice. So, I know for us, we've put it into our, our fundamental 5. So physicality is there with skating, passing, shooting, and puck control. And it is, weighted, relatively equally. We would argue skating is weighted more heavily than anything else. I think, to Hal's point, teaching physicality sometimes feels like expensive. And I mean that to say, like, when I've coached for 15 years, when you spend 15 minutes teaching shooting and everyone's standing around, you feel like you're kind of wasting the ice a bit. And obviously there's different ways to do it off the ice. But as a minor hockey coach who maybe doesn't have the resources or the know-how to teach it, it feels like, oh, we're going to stand against the wall and learn how to lean onto our edges here. I know here in Toronto, ice time's $7 a minute. So it starts to feel like you're wasting a little bit of everyone's time and efforts. But I think, the being able to safely protect yourself when you've got the puck is essential. Yes, it drives offense, but it also keeps people safe. I think it also, has a big impact on, concussions and awareness on the ice, like being heads up. But I also think the physicality in terms of pinning and how to defend is not taught well either. And that's a sentiment I hear a lot from college hockey coaches, having coached junior and midget for a long time. The question is often, do you have any Ds that can actually defend? It's a very common question you get, like Ds who actually understand, how to own space, manipulate space, manage space when they don't have the puck. So I wonder if, all these highlight reels we watch on Instagram and of, guys with the puck, women with the puck doing amazing things. And obviously, like, moving someone from the front of the net's not nearly as exciting. But I think there's a craft to that, and it's not taught enough on the female side. And so they shy away from contact defensively and offensively. And so I think those are just some things that, coaches need to be empowered to do on the female side more, because as they move up to higher levels, especially if they are defensemen or centers, I mean, their ability to be physically effective without the puck is going to be really critical. And it's wingers too to recover pucks. So we've made it an emphasis here, and it still has a long way to go, and we've emphasized it in terms of with the puck simply because it will give us an advantage, because it's not expected. And it will allow our teams and our players to have some offensive success, but certainly need to address it more on the defensive side of the puck too. One thing we have done, Wally, or we're going to do for next year, which is a suggestion or a thought, we have a couple coaches in our organization who are also refs, and they're going to come and do some like education sessions with the coaches, like about calls and about communicating with the refs, and kind of like get on our level sort of thing. Like we're all together in this. And I think to the 15 years I've coached, like that, I've never done that before. I've never had a session where I sat down, like other than me just talking to a ref. So we're going to do that kind of on an association-wide level, and have some simple handouts, or resources for coaches. So you can't say you didn't know, or, oh, I yelled at the ref, or, I guess expectations in terms of how we behave and what we do, both good and bad in those situations. So I'm I'll be interested to see what kind of impact that has. I think we've planned to have 2 of those types of education sessions. But thinking back on my own coaching career, I sure could have used a little bit more education on how to deal with some of those things. So we'll see how it impacts on a large scale.
Are you a course conductor for the certification programs?
Me? No, not at D1.
Because everything you've said is covered. Everything you've talked about for 20 years is covered in the checking modules put together by Hockey Canada. There's a pyramid of respect. Officials are talking about it, and we used to have official clinics going on at the same time as coaches clinics. So we're reinventing the wheel in our conversation. Formally, the certification programs do spend time on it.
Well, I took D1 a long time ago, so it's not that it's never been hit on, but I think it's, and maybe on an association level, to actually just sit down with the ref and almost like what we're doing here. Hey, like I keep having this issue that's coming up, or 6 of us have had this thing, and how to being able to troubleshoot it, as well as some key principles or things that we want to address. And the physicality one, again, there's the how to physically do it in the moment, right? How do I pin someone? How do I get stick on puck, body on body? But then the bridge is, how do you actually do that in a practice? Like you understand how to do a wrist shot, but how do you get 17 of them doing a wrist shot in drills that flow and those types of things, right? So I think it's I'm sure if I asked most of our coaches of the what, how do you pin someone in the corner? They'd probably get it 60 to 70% right? How are you going to teach that when you've got 15 kids and you got the goalie coach at the other end and you have, your breakout to work on and a bunch of other things, right? And maybe I think that's a bit of the secret sauce here with everything, is having those types of plans to say, okay, if we're working on pins, how do we get from A in that curriculum to being able to do it in a one-on-one battle where practice is going to end, or that small area 3-on-3 game where practice is going to end? How do you take them through that, right? Because you can watch all the videos you want on like how to shoot a snapshot, but if you can't get it through in traffic on a 2-on-1 type of, I think they suffer with the game application, right? There's still a very big split between pure skill and pure system, and there's a huge middle, and I think that's where the majority of our coaches, at least, struggle. They're fine if they have to run a breakout drill, and they're fine if it's like pure skill repetition, but that huge middle, and unfortunately, they just don't teach any of it then. They don't teach conceptual hockey because they don't understand how to teach conceptual hockey. And then the girls don't understand, that to me is hockey IQ. They don't understand how to apply those skills and to solve problems in game situations. They just know, okay, coach told me how to pivot on the breakout and have my stick on the ice, and I know what our breakout is supposed to be, and that's all their work on the breakout. There's no, look over my shoulder, see if the D is pinching. Do I pop to the middle because of like decision making? I think, and that side is that messy middle that we need to do a lot better of a job of teaching people how to put it all together.
I'm curious down the road here. One of the problems is the NHL playoffs are going on, and everybody's watching them, particularly on the guys' side. And Tom's concerned with the physicality. And Tom, you're a Flames fan, and they seem to draw the line pretty well with what they can and can't do in the NHL. And they're going to be a pretty physical team that I think will meet any challenge physically, and fighting is going to be a part of that challenge in the playoffs. I'm really intrigued about how the playoffs are going to go in terms of transitioning from pure hockey during the year. It's similar to the female game. There's very little hitting. There's good stick on puck checking. There is some finishing of checks for the purpose of getting a puck. But in the playoffs, the line is higher. The degree of force is higher. The intent is more obviously physicality, and checks are going to be finished, and penalties aren't going to be called. And that affects the guys' side of the game, kids growing up and wanting to get drafted, wanting to play in the NHL. It's a distraction in terms of figuring out how to play, how to coach them to play. So I'm moving forward with the NHL playoffs beginning. At some point, I'd like to spend some time talking about the physicality question in the line in terms of which teams appear to be peak performing in the playoffs relative to the playoff game compared to the normal seasonal games.
Yeah, I think that, guys, come the playoffs, guys make sure they finish the check. But the game has changed because guys can spin away and do this kind of stuff much better than before. So if you go running around, you're taking yourself out of the play. Plus the power plays, some of them are so good, they can't afford to, they can't afford to be taking penalties. So that's kind of, and I think the first round, the penalties are called quite a bit still in the first round. It's once you get back to the first round, it really gets pure 10 kind of hockey. So yeah, you have to stay out of the penalty box, but you have to have good technique. And, like I love the way the Flames check. You watch their defensemen, their toe caps are facing the puck. They don't get, they're not trying to get the hit and, getting beat on one-on-ones and this sort of thing. So I think they're teaching that really well. And that's something that I know you teach, Wally, and that is really important.
I just wanted to mention here, Ray Bennett, when he was coaching at St. Louis, this might be 10 years ago. I was attended the clinic that he spoke on, and he pulled up a video of St. Louis's highlights of stick on puck. They were so aggressive with their stick on the puck, and they gained possession of the puck over and over again. And it was, to me, the first time in my mind I said, finishing a check is useless. You take yourself out of position. And I use that video, and I have it on my site, and I use it at every coaching clinic for male coaches of male hockey who are advocating hitting and screaming and yelling hitting from the bench, which obviously ignores the intent of checking. But the stick on puck highlight, if you go to it, St. Louis stick on puck, type it in the website. Once I put this video on for everybody to view, you can search that topic and watch that 5-minute video. It was the best thing I've ever seen. And incidentally, Ray is still on the bench with Colorado now. And I think that it's just going to be really great to watch these great hockey teams and see where the line of contact is, how it's going to affect the officiating, affect the playing and the temperament of every team. Has anybody heard how Canada did against Finland today?
They lost in the quarters, 6-5, I think.
Okay.
They didn't do that well, did they, this year?
I'm curious how Corey Chevery was received as a woman on the bench too, if that what it was like for her, and then whether she was given much of an influence or a voice in that situation. I'd be curious to hear from her, Wally, if you ever reach out to her about her experiences in coaching and not getting to go to the Olympics, but now having this experience.
Yeah. Well, I I appreciate her being asked to be involved. I think it might have been a token exercise, but Barry Midori has mentored the U18 program in the past, the 5 regional teams. He hasn't done that for the last 4 years. So their perspective of preparation in terms of mentorship, it's been lost. Now, most of those kids are on teams and maybe don't get the developmental ice time in all situations they should, with the exception of Bedard, who played before, but they're obviously not developing as well as the other countries at the same age level. So there's a lot of issues with that program moving forward in terms of how you prepare the team and the coaches to coach that team. And I know that Barry had a hands-on approach with managing the bench and making sure everybody accepted their roles as they moved up the ladder during the selection process. And that was huge. But from the games I watched, Tom, I watched the first 2 games, and they really had a difficult time playing without the puck in their zone. The Americans were in another league, and I think the fact they, were challenged in every other game, maybe except for Germany, is sort of proof of the pudding. Is that you've got to know how to play without the puck before you play with it at that level.
Yeah, like that. What I'm seeing is so much 1-on-5 hockey. Like Darryl Belfry, when he was here, he was trying to get the kids to play together when his daughter was on the ice.
Yeah.
I watched my grandson's game from the Saskatchewan Junior League, and then even the AAA midget girls, the AA s moved the puck and played away from the puck way better. And all, the way all the practices go, all the skill, and great with the puck and being able to do all these kind of things. I think maybe we've overemphasized that individual stuff so much that we don't learn to play, 5 players on the ice or 6 players on the ice together all the time, because it's the same happened in the women's hockey. The US was dominating for so long. This year, Canada looked like, they played the game way better, I thought, this year. And I think we really have to look at in Canada how we're stressing so much individual skills that, that's part of the game, but certainly, I can be a great typist and do 200 words a minute, but it doesn't make me an author. So you can have the skills, but you have to know how to play the game. And I think, that's something that has to be looked at.
Well, on the male side, we deal with, up here in Alberta, the Bantam draft. Now, Mike and Tim, are you familiar with the Bantam draft and the impact it has on hockey development and hockey culture in Canada?
I am not.
Mike? Okay, well, are you familiar with it?
Not as familiar as I should be, but no.
Well, I think it's worth sharing this story to you. In Ontario, they don't draft kids for the major junior league at the Bantam age. In Alberta and Western Canada, they do. So that means kids playing Bantam hockey who aren't fully mature yet are aiming at getting drafted in the Western Hockey League. That's delayed for a year in Ontario because they start at minor midget. But that year of Bantam hockey and drafting at that age has a tremendous psychological impact on kids quitting the game if they're not drafted. It dovetails with your concern about hitting and size and growth of maturity. But kids are playing one-on-one hockey to get drafted. And that's the way it goes. That's the way it is. And you have to coach the one-on-one hockey out of them and begin to coach team hockey and using their skills to apply together. And that's a big concern up here. Those kids play in the, they go up and play in the Western League, and they don't get to play as much situations as they should and develop properly. Most of them are accelerated a little bit too early, and it's all about getting them up to the next level before they're really ready to. So it's a process. Development's a process, and I think right now in North America, in Canada in particular, there's a little bit too much acceleration going on. It's okay with the Bedards and the McDavids and those kids who are stand out that much and get sanctioned to be drafted early. But there are many kids that are go through the Bantam draft and encouraged to leave playing the proper age level a year too soon and not get to play, but sit on the bench and not develop as much observing hockey at the Western Hockey League level and not playing in games as much, but getting good practice time. So it's a dilemma. The girls don't have to face it yet, but I know when I mentored the distraction in female hockey, Sammy, is the scholarship. Girls need attention. They need to be on the power play, and they need to be getting points and getting recognition so they can get scholarships. That can be a distraction so that you lose sight of the process of developing as a complete team player. That's what's happened on the female side, in my estimation. Sammy, do you watch the NHL playoffs at all or games?
So yes, I do watch the once the playoffs roll around. Billy and I get the NHL network, but we actually don't have cable, so we don't watch much hockey otherwise. I used to watch SportsCenter every morning, but then getting rid of cable, I certainly do miss that. So I get my snippets from social media. And then the odd time we'll go to a restaurant to watch a Jets game or a Leafs game or something like that. But it is certainly not as much a part of our lives as it used to be without cable, for sure. But come playoff time, we certainly make an effort to watch most of the games. Oh, you're on mute.
A friend of mine delivered a book to me written by a Winnipeg author about the demise of the Winnipeg Jets.
Interesting.
Years ago. It's called Thin Ice. And it has to do with the small markets in Canada relative to the big markets in the States, and the idea of being able to stay afloat financially without the TV money that the NBA and Major League Baseball has managed to access.
Well, I think that'll definitely correlate to the way women's hockey is managed in the future, because in the States, there's way more money. There's way more money in TV. There's it's just easier to get sponsors and people to games, but there's so many more players in Canada. So I feel like it'll be interesting to see where these professional teams place their teams. Also, in terms of travel, too, you're having to put a ton of money if you put any teams in the West into simply getting, if you had a team in Calgary, the amount of money it'll take for them to participate in a league in the East. So I'm sure it'd be a fascinating read, Wally, and probably 20 years ahead of its time for women's hockey as well.
Good point. Good point. No, it's a good book. It's probably 20 years old right now. I don't know if the Jets are endangered of losing their franchise or not. I don't think so, but I'm partway through the book, and I'm not sure if it gets into the existing stage of the Jets and whether they're fighting to survive. But Calgary and Edmonton were clumped at that time into the same thing. It was about the time of the World Hockey Association, the expansion.
It'd be a really fascinating read. I've got to know Mark Chipman over the years, who owns the Jets with True North, and they really endeared themselves to the city this time, coming in, and season tickets were sold out right away. They were kind of in a smaller venue. The Jets really became the go-to thing. And for the longest time, the Jets were not making the playoffs, and it was okay. People were still excited. And then the Jets did well one year, and now the expectations are very high. I can remember going when the Jets first came back, and people stood for the last 10 minutes of every game, regardless. They were just so excited. But now I think the true hockey fans are coming out and wanting more.
Yeah.
It reminds me of almost watching the 72 Summit series and some of the documentaries that I've seen where the expectations are just so high that the fans have turned on their organization. You see that in Montreal as well, that sometimes knowledgeable hockey fans are not what you want. You want a Nashville Predators type hockey fan that just loves it.
Yeah. I'm going to go grab the book just to let you know. You may know the author.
Tom, while he's gone, how's your goalie faring that went through all of the issues this year?
I texted her and she just said she's doing okay and thanked me for texting. And then I talked to her former teammate and she said she has the baby, most of the time.
Okay.
But just the thought of how much she wanted to play.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, hopefully it doesn't mean the end of her career. Maybe this is just on pause for a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that was a tough situation, that's for sure.
Sammy, there's the book. Thin Ice. Jim Silver is the author. And inside the first cover, Money, Politics, and the Demise of an NHL Franchise. Jim Silver is a professor of political science at the University of Winnipeg.
Interesting.
So it's a pretty darn good book. But it goes through
I'm still playing with Preston and Levy and Morris Lukowicz that all played there, eh? And they loved Winnipeg. But the coach there, Maurice, he basically quit because I think he was just so frustrated that they weren't.
Yeah, he felt like he had lost the room. That was hard because Paul Maurice, the fans really, I think all of hockey really kind of liked him, and he felt like he had lost the guys.
Well, I watched them play, Sammy, and one goal, two defensemen were standing there, and the guy got 3 shots, and neither defenseman moved to the guy.
Yeah, the care level was low.
Yeah, and I just posted a thing with Calgary practicing 3 or 4 years ago when they didn't do well, and it's a one-on-one that you're surfing, and goes both ways, and the half effort in it was it was unbelievable. They're like little kids just waving their stick at the puck, and the guy's cutting in and shooting. They're not back checking to take the stick, and that's kind of what I saw with Winnipeg, and that's how Edmonton used to play. But this new coach has got them. The last couple of games I've seen them, they're coming back hard. But Winnipeg has gone soft as far, and geez, they got some of the biggest forwards in the league.
For this group, I would love, Wally, if you can ever get a hold of an NHL player that has played fairly recently. I don't know if you guys follow Shane Corson on Twitter, but he's had some really interesting threads that the First explained finances and where the money goes when you make $1 million contract. And then the most recent thread explained travel and just broke it down and what it does on your body, what it does for you personally to play an 80-game schedule. So it was really interesting. It's obviously first world problems. It's not, but it was interesting to hear from that. But also I'd be really curious from a guy that has maybe just retired, because they can't say it if they're in it. But that motivation, how do they find it? How do they get it if maybe they're not getting it from the coach, or in a long season, on the day after a long travel? The Jets' travel schedule would be, or Calgary or Edmonton's would be so much harder than, say, Philadelphia or New York. So some just points of curiosity that, how does that happen, that a player is playing in an NHL game and doesn't look like they're trying? Is that fatigue, or is it that they're not trying? I don't know.
I think some of it's what's acceptable on your team, with the teammates. I think a lot of it's got to do with, what your teammates have to hold you accountable for some stuff. So, and, the coach
But you
can
don't
only
think
say,
that those guys would be embarrassed in front of their friends and family watching back home, in front of a TV audience? Like, I don't know.
oh yeah, they are, but,
yeah.
It's really tough. And that's what Sutter's done with Calgary, is it's just not acceptable to give in half efforts and this kind of stuff. And that's kind of the secret sauce to coaching. And somehow Winnipeg is, in my view, they've kind of lost it. And Edmonton, I think, has discovered it. They're going to be pretty scary.
Well, maybe Michael or Tim or Al might have links with a guy that has maybe just currently retired to get an idea of what it's like to actually play at that level. And I know, Wally, you just did some stuff with the Leafs. Just really curious, the sort of insider psyche and dynamic.
No, I hear where you're coming from. I'll talk to Tim Bothwell about it, and it might be a sensitive thing for a former player to talk about, but from the outside looking in, accountability starts with yourself, and coaches play a part in what's acceptable and what isn't acceptable. And when you lose the room and you lose the players, and how long you can keep them, I don't know, but I think it's a difficult sport to play, as much money as they're played at a high level. The stress on them in their markets is greater in some cities than others. But I think the word accountability starts with the organization and its ability to walk the talk of what's acceptable and what isn't. And I think the Oilers, in my opinion, have had to go through what they've been through for many years in terms of trying to achieve a team effort versus rely on certain players. And that's what Sutter has been able to do. They do have a number one line on the power play, but the balance and the appreciation of the meaning of team, that's been accomplished. And that's the art of coaching. And somebody's going to win, somebody's going to lose, but you don't want to lose without a good effort. That's for sure. Tom, you mentioned you're still recruiting for the SAIT team?
Yeah, I'm like, I had an interesting email exchange. This girl plays in Manitoba sports school, but she's sending emails with one last name and then she says, I'm this name, but in their roster, it's another name. And so I said, well, I don't find you here. I find someone with your first name there, but not you. And she said, oh, I changed my name, but I'm using my old name on my email or something like this. I don't know. So I was working on getting that straightened out last night to see if she actually played, because you want to look at some stats and stuff. You know, if she attended the school and never made the team, it's not a whole lot of use bringing her, you know, to SAIT. So, yeah, so, you know, and I'm getting questions about, there's no academic advisor for the athletes anymore. And another one was asking me about academic scholarships. So I had to go searching the website to find links for her. So I'm doing that kind of stuff. Probably an hour every day. I get emails from people here and there. I don't know when they're gonna name the new coach. I certainly hope it's my assistant coach, but who knows what they're gonna do.
Who is your assistant coach?
Well, I had two that would be great, but one, Mike Schumi, he played in Switzerland 10 years. Played at McGill as a D, and his partner there was Babcock. And then,
Oh, interesting.
yeah, and then he went to Switzerland. They were looking for a forward. So he said, yeah, I play forward. So he ended up playing pro there for 10 years. He's a huge man. Like he's bigger than Terry Johnson, who's a huge man. And Terry, you know, Terry coached AAA girls too, and he'd be a terrific coach. And he, you know, he played in the Stanley Cup Finals for the Flames and for Toronto and all this kind of stuff. So I don't know if he applied or not. I haven't talked to him, but yeah, I had unbelievable coaching staff. We just had so much trouble through that epidemic, you know.
Do you have any females on your coaching staff?
Yeah, my goalie coach and then my skating coach. My goalie coach played at Wisconsin Superior, and she's from Winnipeg. Mel Kunzelman, and
Okay.
then Stacy Allen played at U of A, and she's the skating coach. And then I also had a student manager.
Do you think that the school would be looking to get a female head coach?
I think they are, but I think they're a little nervous because they hired one. That's why I took over, because they hired one that coached about half a year at Bantam, and was the same age of some of the players. There were some players in their late 20s.
So didn't really do their due diligence to get a good one.
No, I think they just wanted a female coach, and she was probably pretty knowledgeable hockey, but you know, it's tough to be dumped into a situation like that in charge of people the same age as you. And you know, I just think,
yeah, the tough thing with women at that level right now is there are so many great opportunities available, you know, so it's hard. I found that difficult when I was hiring for the Furies and looking for female qualified coaches, that most had been taken. That's what's hard, is you kind of have to poach from other programs, which isn't necessarily what you want to do. But I think as, you know, the next generation of kids come out and then have 10 years under their belt of coaching, there will be so many more fighting for those positions. Yeah.
And it pays pretty good, but it, you know, you'd almost have to have a flexible job, like be a real estate agent or be the boss of, and you know, because some of the practices, you know, if you're practicing at 4:00, it's like Terry and Mel would come. We had a later practice; they'd come to that practice.
Gotcha.
And Mike, because he's a manager of a flooring company, he could kind of come all the time. So whoever they hire has to have that flexibility if they're working a full-time job. And then the rumor is they're going to tear down the arena and everything, and the team was going to practice out of Winsport for a year or two. So they haven't made that official yet. But yeah, so I think they would like to have a female, but it has to, you know, they'd have to bump the salary up. Like right now it's 40. and that's not enough to do much on
necessarily be a full-time job, but
yeah.
Combined with another part-time job is not a bad salary.
Yeah, and that's right. And so me retired on my pension, and that, I got the flexible hours and, and the two things together are just fine. But
right, but it's certainly not a part-time job. Like you couldn't just get maybe some of the women that now are stay-at-home moms, or like they still would require so much time and effort of being at the rink and creating all that.
oh yeah, you got to deal with the players. You got to, I know takes me about an hour and a half to make a practice plan every day and stuff, and yeah, so yeah, they have to have someone with flexible hours too. So I think they'd really like to have a qualified female, but you need to have flexible hours. There's one I know of, but she likes to snowboard, and I don't think she wants to do something full time,
Gotcha.
So she's helped in the girls hockey a lot, but she's a terrific coach as far as I know, and really good with the players. But I don't think she wants to do that kind of stuff. So yeah, so if Mike could get the job and have
some female assistants,
assistant coaches, so.
I'm just wondering, Dominic Pittis joined us about an hour ago. I don't know if he's still on.
He's not on anymore.
Okay. Al Ramsey, are you with us? It's been a while since I've heard from you. Kim, are you still on?
Yes.
How about Kim McCullough?
Yeah, I'm here, Wally. I got about 4 more minutes.
Okay.
Go south here.
What's going on in your hockey world? Is it all hockey school time or?
No, not yet. It is the tail end of tryouts for U13 and above here. So that is kind of jam-packed into 2 weeks. So our B teams finish off this weekend. So they're sort of at the tail end of the process. We're doing a new skill program based on the Fundamental 5 that I talked about earlier. So that started last week. So I'm not running it. It's actually one of the first programs that I'm designing the whole curriculum for and training all the instructors, but I'm actually not on the ice for. So that's kind of fun to see how that gets implemented and executed when I'm not the one doing so. And then we're providing for our U9 and U11 players, because their tryouts are in the fall. We're doing evaluations based purely on skill. So we teach in the first 6 weeks of the program, we teach all the fundamentals of the Fundamental 5. And then in the final 2 weeks, we evaluate them on those skills. So basically repeating a lot of the drills that they would have seen earlier. And then they'll get some information, some feedback on skills. So it does not include compete level, hockey IQ, overall effectiveness as a player. It's purely skill-based, with the intent being, if you got a 2 out of 5 on skating, and the comments say needs to learn how to turn left, that if you are, eager to make a rep team in the fall, that you might go and address that. And if you're just a house league player who just wants some feedback, that's cool too. So it's not mandatory. And we have in that U9 and U11 program, we have 160 players who've signed up in 8 different groups. And then we have a similar program for U13 and above, all the way up to U18 that has 160 players, but they don't receive the evaluation. So that's just pure, hockey schoolish instruction. So pretty big undertaking, but I'm thankful I've maybe figured out some of my thoughts on how to develop these skills, and I've got all the videos to support them. But my 2 lead instructors with Total Female Hockey are kind of running the show. So it's an 8-week program, and I won't be here for most of it. I'm going on the road here for 2 months starting next week. So I'll be off with the trailer with the family for 2 months. So if they need to troubleshoot it, they won't be able to get me. So yeah, it'll be, that's kind of what's happening here, and dealing with all the trauma and drama of tryouts. It's always super fun, but I've done that for 15 years, so that's no problem. Nothing a coach or a player or a parent can say to me will ruffle anyone's feathers. So yeah, just tying up some loose ends before we head on the road next week. But hockey never stops in Toronto, Wally. Spring hockey, all that. I had a family say, "Oh, wait, we're not going to tryouts because we're going to a spring hockey tournament in Nashville." I thought to myself, that's you live in Toronto, right? You live in Toronto, the hotbed, and yet you fly to Nashville. So it sounds fun and ridiculous, but hey, you got money to burn. I guess it's a good way to burn it.
Party.
Well, listen, yeah, I mean, I might, you know, I say I don't do spring hockey, but if my kids really want to do it and I get to go to Nashville and party while my kids play mediocre hockey, I mean, it's not the worst thing ever. Not the worst use of my money. But anyways, yeah, so yeah, just all that. And then just planning for next season. But like I said, I shut her down here for 6 to 8 weeks starting next week. So I won't be around. I won't be sharking for a while. So make sure you say some brilliant things so when I can watch the recordings, I learn something.
Al Ramsey, what's going on in your world? Tryouts, or are people trying to steal players away, or what's going on?
All the good stuff. Sorry, Wally, I have computer problems here, so my mic wouldn't come off mute earlier when you called on me, and then I got kicked out when I put my video on. So, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, so we're through our tryouts now. So for my one association, we had them back in March, so which is fairly early down here. So that team's been straightened away for a while. The other association, the main one I'm involved with, we finished them up there mid-April. So right now we're still working through a few things, trying to find coaches for a couple of the teams. We had a lot of growth this year. Like for next year, we're looking at, I think, 12 or 13 new teams. So it's going to take us up to, we've gone from about 250 players. Next year, we're going to have about 700, over the course of like 4 years. So it's been a fairly significant step up. But I'm kind of in the middle of my annual break. So I try to take at least a month where I don't really do a whole lot in terms of hockey, just to get a mental break, and my son to get him a physical break, and turning down a lot of spring tournaments and spring tournament teams and coaching and him playing. And it just seems like every day somebody emails it. There's so much of that stuff going on. It's kind of like what Kim was saying, the trips to Nashville, and there's a lot of local ones here as well. But we did do a clinic last week. It's our fundraiser thing that we do every year at the end of April, but pretty much nothing until the end of May in terms of the hockey, And it's been great. It's been a really nice little reprieve with my son, right? Like, he, at the end of the season, it was long, especially playing on 2 teams this year. It was a lot of hockey, 5 days a week, at least. And, every day he wants to go play catch, he wants to go play lacrosse, and he wants to go throw the basketball around and all this stuff. He's like, he gets off the bus and it's like gym class, pretty much, he's having a ball. So, and he's having the opportunity to hear a few different voices. He's got, a fairly good baseball coach, and his lacrosse team is, he likes that. So.
Are you going to, I was going to ask you, the last name Ramsey, and I sent a text to you. There's a Ramsey girl that played at the Olympic Oval. She was a national team candidate from PEI. Do you know if she's related to you?
Definitely not closely, but probably, depending on how far back you go.
She's in Germany, graduated from university there, playing pro soccer, and has played hockey, but she was a national team candidate. So
that's interesting.
I saw the name and I was curious about that because I don't know how many Ramseys there are in PEI, but there must be a lot. So
Yeah, there's a fair amount. They got there quite a while ago, so there's connections way back probably. But yeah, looking forward to getting home. We're going end of June. We're gonna go back. We're gonna spend a week at Allen's hockey school. My son's kind of looking forward to that. So that's his big thing over there. That's his camp for the summer. Although now he wants an overnight camp of some kind. So we could try and figure out something else. Just send him to the woods somewhere.
okay. Well, listen, I've got to head out here. I've got some appointments to attend to. Got to get my dog to the groomers. And I'm testing negative for COVID now, so it looks like I'm on the recovery, and that's a good thing. So I want to thank you all for coming on, and looking forward to the start of the playoffs, Tom, and of course cheering for the Flames, but I just find the playoffs, particularly on the guys' side, really intriguing because it is so competitive. And the NHL sort of are the model that can cause havoc in minor hockey with the way games might be played, should be played, and the score clock, of course. You're going to get hired or fired at the NHL based on the eventual results. So, Sammy, you check up that author and that book, and I'm really curious because you probably know a lot of the people in it. I don't know how old you were back then, but yeah, you should have been born by then.
Yeah, Wally, I just wanted to say, I don't know if the coaches on here go to the Facebook Ice Hockey Coaching Youth to Pro. I just posted a few things on there that I think that people would find worthwhile. Some drills and games and other things like that. Okay. So Ice Hockey Coaching Youth to Pro.
Thank you, Tom. Good luck with everything, Wally, today.
Okay. Take care, everybody. Tim, thanks for joining.
You're very welcome.
Everybody.
All right.
Take
So
care.
long. I got to cut out here. Talk to you later, Tommy.
See ya.